Stephen Miller thought he was about to humiliate Jasmine Crockett on live television. Instead, she asked him one question, just 6 quiet words, that made his face go pale and his entire world collapse in front of millions. What did she know about his wife, Elon Musk, and Austin? And why did it destroy everything? Before we get to this explosive moment, tell us where you're watching from, and if you believe truth still matters, hit subscribe. We've got another jaw-dropping story coming tomorrow. House Judiciary Committee. Tuesday afternoon. The clock strikes 2:47 p.m. C-SWIND cameras are rolling. The press gallery is packed. Reporters shoulder to shoulder, phones ready, pens primed. Stephen Miller straightens his papers, adjusts his microphone, and looks across the table at Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett with the smug certainty of a man who thinks he's about to end her career. "Congresswoman Crockett," he begins, voice dripping with condescension, "can you explain why your immigration policies continue to undermine American security?" There's a pause. Crockett doesn't flinch, doesn't blink. She leans forward, eyes locked on his, voice cool and measured. "Stephen," she says, "how's Katie enjoying Austin lately?" A beat. Silence. 1 second. 2, 3, 4. Miller's face freezes. His mouth opens slightly as if a reply is forming, but nothing comes out. His jaw tenses. His fingers tighten around the base of his water glass. Then someone in the press gallery whispers, just loud enough for the mics to catch it. "Oh my God." Crockett doesn't let up. "I hear the rooftop views at SpaceX are stunning this time of year," she adds, casually, almost like an afterthought. Miller's hand jerks. The water glass tips over, spilling across his stack of papers. His other hand shoots out to steady them, but it's too late. Reporters begin typing furiously. Phones start buzzing. The air changes. Stephen Miller, the political assassin, just got ambushed by a single sentence. Crockett remained still. Perfectly still. No raised voice, no outburst. Just a quiet, cutting question with the weight of a wrecking ball. In a single moment, the power dynamic flips. And as Miller scrambles, sweating and speechless, the world watches the beginning of his very public fall. Stephen Miller is not your average political advisor. In his late 30s, with a reputation sharper than his tailored suits, he rose to national power as a senior advisor to President Donald Trump. But Miller wasn't interested in speeches or policy briefings. His weapon of choice? Opposition research. He built his entire career by dismantling people methodically, permanently, and without remorse. Senators, journalists, political challengers. Anyone who stood in the way of his vision for America quickly found themselves at the center of humiliating headlines and media storms. Miller didn't just debate opponents, he destroyed them. What made Miller especially dangerous wasn't just his knowledge of how to manipulate the system. It was his ability to weaponize the personal. Private emails, financial disclosures, family secrets. Nothing was off limits. And if he couldn't find dirt, he created enough smoke to make anyone look guilty. With icy eyes and that infamous smirk, he walked into every political showdown with the confidence of a man who already knew how it would end. His wife, Katie Miller, matched his political cunning. A longtime political aide herself, she had built her own reputation as someone not to be underestimated. Together, they were seen as the ultimate DC power couple, ruthless, calculated, and completely aligned in their ambitions. If Stephen Miller was the knife, Katie was the hand that aimed it. They operated in sync, carefully crafting strategies behind the scenes, working contacts, and setting traps. For 8 years, they moved through Washington like a shadow government, always one step ahead. To Miller, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett was more than just a rising star. She was a threat, ideologically, politically, and personally. A bold black woman who didn't flinch when challenged. That was intolerable. Miller made it his mission to bring her down. For the past 3 years, he had watched every hearing she attended, dissected her interviews, scrutinized her voting record. He sent FOIA requests to her office, hired private researchers, showed up to her press conferences uninvited, always lurking, always waiting for the moment he could humiliate her on national television. He believed that day had finally come. The Judiciary Committee scheduled a hearing on immigration, Crockett's policy weak spot, or so Miller thought. He crafted his attack carefully, laced with assumptions and rhetorical traps. He prepped for weeks, reviewing every line of Crockett's public record, rehearsing questions that would force her onto the defensive. In his mind, it wasn't a hearing. It was an ambush. What Miller didn't know was that Crockett had also been preparing, not for a policy debate, but for the exact moment when she would finally flip the power dynamic. And she wasn't going to do it with a speech or a document. She was going to do it with one question and a secret. Jasmine Crockett didn't come from power. She earned it. Raised in working-class St. Louis, she watched injustice happen every day, to neighbors, to classmates, to her own family. That fire led her to law school, then to the courtroom, where she became a civil rights attorney who never lost a case. Her secret? Preparation. She didn't walk into a courtroom unless she knew every detail, every loophole, every vulnerability. And when she won her seat in Congress, she brought that same courtroom discipline with her to Washington. Crockett was no stranger to political attacks. Being a young black woman in Congress meant every move she made was scrutinized, but she never gave her enemies what they wanted. She didn't scream. She didn't stumble. She responded with facts, with poise, with surgical precision. That's what terrified people like Stephen Miller. For years, she knew Miller had targeted her. She saw him in the gallery during her hearings pretending to be an observer. She heard about his calls to local journalists, fishing for rumors. She even received anonymous packages of research meant to scare her off. None of it worked. But it told her something critical. Stephen Miller feared her. And then, 3 weeks before the hearing, she got the text message that changed everything. It came from Ayanna Blackwell, an old friend from college who now worked in venture capital in Austin, Texas. The message was short, but the impact was seismic. "Girl, you're not going to believe who I just saw Elon with." Attached were 2 photos. In one, Elon Musk was whispering into Katie Miller's ear. In the other, Katie's hand rested on his chest. The setting, an exclusive rooftop event hosted by SpaceX, intimate, expensive, and completely off the radar. Crockett didn't rush to leak the photos. She didn't need to. What she had was bigger than a headline. It was leverage. For weeks she said nothing, but quietly she made calls, cross-checked timelines, verified flight records, matched outfits from Katie's public posts to what she wore in the photos. Every detail aligned. This was real. She waited. Not out of hesitation, but out of strategy. She knew Miller would come for her at that hearing. She knew he would try to publicly shame her, so she did what she always did. She prepared. When that moment finally came, she was ready. One question, one name, one location, and Stephen Miller's empire would begin to crumble before millions of viewers. The House Judiciary hearing was already tense before Stephen Miller even opened his mouth. The subject was immigration enforcement and asylum delays, but everyone in the room sensed there was more at stake. Reporters lined the back wall, cameras zoomed in from every angle, and committee members sat upright, anticipating fireworks. Stephen Miller adjusted his lapel, cleared his throat, and leaned into the mic with the arrogance of a man who had planned this moment down to the syllable. "Congresswoman Crockett," he began, his voice sharp and condescending, "you've repeatedly voted to dismantle effective immigration enforcement. At what point does your pursuit of woke theatrics outweigh your duty to protect American families?" The room went still. It was vintage Miller, direct, dismissive, designed to provoke. Committee members glanced around uncomfortably. Crockett didn't blink. She sat motionless, her hands folded on the table, her voice smooth as silk. "Stephen," she said evenly, "do you want to discuss my voting record or your personal one?" A pause. "Just long enough to register." Miller let out a sarcastic chuckle. "We're here to discuss policy, Congresswoman, not tabloid fodder." "Good," Crockett said, tilting her head. "Because I'd hate to distract from national security with something as petty as, say, a rooftop cocktail in Austin." Miller flinched. It was slight, but noticeable. A ripple moved through the room. Some heads turned. A staffer's pen froze mid-scribble. "Is Katie still in Texas today?" Crockett asked, still calm, still razor-sharp. Miller narrowed his eyes. What are you implying? Nothing, Crockett replied, her voice unwavering. Just wondering how your family feels about border security, when the borders in your own home seem a little porous. The gallery murmured. A reporter in the back audibly muttered, "Wait, what did she just say?" Miller tried to refocus. This is absurd. Let's return to the matter at hand. Oh, we will, said Crockett. Right after we clarify whether your wife was in Dallas last week or on a rooftop in Austin with Elon Musk. The temperature in the room dropped. Every camera turned. Miller swallowed. His fingers gripped the edge of the table. And Jasmine Crockett? She didn't move a muscle, because she already knew he had no answer. Stephen Miller tried to regain control. This committee hearing is not the place for personal speculation. Crockett nodded. You're right. It's a place for truth. You want facts? Let's talk facts. She leaned forward slightly. March 19th, the Lorien Hotel, Austin, Texas. Rooftop fundraiser hosted by SpaceX. No press allowed. Exclusive guest list. Your wife Katie arrived alone. Miller blinked rapidly. You don't know what you're talking about. I have eyewitnesses, Crockett said. I have timestamps. I have photos. Would you like to confirm or deny whether your wife was photographed placing her hand on Elon Musk's chest while laughing at something he whispered in her ear? Gasps spread through the gallery like wildfire. Phones came out. Reporters began texting. A committee member dropped his pen. Miller's face turned red. This is character assassination. Crockett stayed composed. No, this is accountability. You made your career destroying people with innuendo. I'm just asking a question. You have no right to bring my family into this. And yet, Crockett said, her tone tightening just slightly, you've brought mine into policy debates for years. You questioned my integrity, my loyalty, my patriotism, all while your own house was, let's say, less than secure. Miller looked to the committee chair. I demand this be struck from the record. This is a disgrace. The chair, visibly startled but trying to remain neutral, replied, Mr. Miller, the Congresswoman has the floor. You're welcome to respond. But Miller wasn't responding. He was spiraling. Crockett turned slightly to face the press gallery. This isn't about marital drama. This is about hypocrisy. It's about the weaponization of morality by people who privately betray the very values they claim to defend. A CNN correspondent whispered into his mic, We're witnessing a complete reversal of power. Miller tried to form words. You don't have any idea what you're unleashing. Crockett smiled faintly. On the contrary, I know exactly what I'm unleashing. She reached for her phone. Not hurried, not threatening. Just enough to make every person in that room freeze. Stephen Miller's hands were trembling. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Crockett tapped her phone gently on the table. Would you like me to display the photos, or shall I describe them for the record? You can't do this, Miller snapped. This is harassment. This is transparency, Crockett replied. Something you've demanded from others for years. Miller reached for his water glass, trying to ground himself, but his hand was shaking too badly. The glass tipped, water spilled across the table and onto his papers. His aides rushed forward but hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. The chair leaned into the mic. Mr. Miller, you may choose to answer the question or decline, but the Congresswoman is within her rights to continue. Miller stood up abruptly. This is a political hit job. You're all complicit. Crockett looked at him and said quietly, We can take a recess, Stephen. Give you a moment. Maybe even a chance to call Austin. See how Katie's doing. The room erupted, not in sound, but in pure, electric silence. Every person in the gallery knew they were watching something historic. Miller tried to stare her down, but his eyes betrayed him. He was finished, and he knew it. "You're done," someone in the back whispered. Crockett turned to the committee chair. "I move that the witness be excused until he's ready to speak to the matter at hand." The chair paused, then nodded. "Hearing is in recess." Miller grabbed his soaked briefcase, muttering to himself, and stormed out of the room, flanked by aides who looked like they wanted to disappear. Before the gavel even dropped, the clip was already trending. And Jasmine Crockett? She sat back in her chair, calm, composed, unmoved. She hadn't yelled. She hadn't made threats. All she'd done was tell the truth at exactly the right moment. The hunter had become the hunted, and in under 10 minutes, Stephen Miller's political armor had shattered in front of the entire nation. 3 weeks before the hearing that would end Stephen Miller's career, Jasmine Crockett's phone buzzed with a message that didn't look political, but would become the most important text of the year. It was from Ayanna Blackwell, one of Jasmine's closest friends from college, now a well-connected venture capitalist in Austin. The message was short, almost casual, but the weight it carried would shift Washington's power map forever. "Girl, you're not going to believe who I saw Elon with." Attached were 2 high-resolution photos. Crockett's heart skipped. She tapped the first one. Yeah, there was Katie Miller. Stephen Miller's wife, unmistakable in a black cocktail dress, standing on the rooftop of the Lerone Hotel during an invite-only SpaceX donor event. She wasn't mingling with random billionaires. She was standing beside Elon Musk, his hand grazing the small of her back, her head thrown back in laughter. The body language was unmistakable. This wasn't political networking. This was something intimate. The second photo was worse. Katie's hand rested gently on Musk's chest as he leaned in, whispering something into her ear. Her wedding ring caught the edge of a street light overhead, glinting like a warning shot. Crockett sat there in silence. This wasn't gossip. It was nuclear. She didn't jump to leak it. That wasn't her style. Crockett believed in precision, not panic. Power wasn't in the information. It was in when and how you used it. And right now, it was only potential energy. So she started making quiet calls. First, to Ayanna. The details checked out. Katie had told Stephen she was visiting family in Dallas, but instead she'd driven straight to Austin. No press, no political handlers, just an elite rooftop crowd, plenty of champagne, and one of the most powerful men in America. Then Jasmine called a Hill reporter she trusted, then a staffer in Judiciary, then a blogger who ran a low-level gossip site with a reputation for sniffing out VIP drama. But Crockett never sent the photos. She didn't need to. All she did was ask questions. Hey, did Katie Miller go off the radar this week? Anyone seen her at the Capitol since last Friday? Any buzz about Musk being spotted with someone unexpected? The rumors started swirling, quiet at first, then louder. Staffers mentioned her absence from recent events. Someone whispered about a boutique hotel sighting. A conservative aide reported seeing Katie at DCA airport with no luggage, strange for a family visit. Meanwhile, Miller was sharpening his knives. He didn't see it coming, not even close. He was preparing a takedown, poring over Crockett's voting record, rehearsing lines in front of a mirror. He told a Fox News producer offhandedly, "Crockett's not ready. She thinks I'm playing checkers. She's about to get hit with chess." But Miller didn't know that Crockett wasn't playing games at all. She was setting traps. And now, the clock was ticking. By the start of the following week, Washington was buzzing, but no one could say exactly why. Katie Miller's name kept slipping into side conversations, not on the record, not in op-eds, but between sips of overpriced espresso in Capitol Hill cafes, in whispered exchanges outside closed-door committee rooms, and in green rooms at cable news studios. Have you seen Katie lately? She wasn't at the fundraiser Friday. Someone said she's been traveling, quietly. But the whispers weren't just about absence. They were about geography. Austin. SpaceX. Elon. No one had proof. No one had photos. But somehow everyone felt it, like the Capitol itself was holding its breath. And still, Jasmine Crockett said nothing. She showed up to hearings, she introduced legislation, she met with constituents. Business as usual. But anyone watching closely could see something different in her eyes. A kind of stillness. Not passive, not distracted, focused. Controlled. Like a fuse burning slowly, leading to something no one else could see yet. Stephen Miller, on the other hand, was riding high. The Judiciary Committee hearing on asylum and immigration enforcement was approaching fast, and he saw it as the stage he'd been building toward for months. Miller had spent weeks dissecting Crockett's every floor speech, every panel comment, every C-SPAN appearance. His team drafted aggressive questions designed to make her stumble, each loaded with implication and soundbite-ready phrasing. He called a conservative blog editor and hinted, "Might want to keep an eye on this hearing. Could be Crockett's last clean performance for a while." He even told a donor over drinks that he planned to cut her off at the knees. Arrogance coated his every move. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't flinching. She was waiting. She had watched men like Miller her entire life. Men who underestimated women, especially black women, who confused quiet with weakness, composure with compliance. She knew he thought she was a stepping stone. He had no idea she was the cliff. And the closer the hearing got, the more obvious it became. The moment to act was nearly here. The rumors were peaking. The whispers had reached the press pool. Even late-night comedy writers were starting to float jokes about Katie's space odyssey. Yet no one had spoken on the record. No article had dropped. No scandal had officially broken. Because the only person who had proof was Jasmine Crockett. And she wasn't interested in headlines. She was interested in timing. And Stephen Miller, smug, overconfident, politically bulletproof, was about to discover that timing was everything. The hearing began the way most of them do. Gavel strike. Committee members taking their seats. C-suite depend on the cameras silently capturing every angle. The press gallery buzzing with quiet anticipation. Stephen Miller sat tall at the witness table, papers stacked neatly before him. He adjusted his tie, smoothed the corners of his notes. Practiced his smirk one last time. Across from him, Jasmine Crockett was already seated, calm, collected, silent. No aides whispered in her ear. No documents scattered across her desk. Just her phone, face down, and a single blank legal pad beside it. She didn't need anything else. She'd already won, and only she knew it. The chairman gave Miller the floor. "Congresswoman Crockett," Miller began, oozing confidence. "Your voting record on immigration reads like a script from a progressive drama. High on emotion, low on enforcement. Are you proud of the chaos your policies have created?" It was a line he'd rehearsed 100 times, crafted to provoke, delivered with precision. Crockett didn't flinch. She looked up, folded her hands, and said with perfect stillness, "Stephen, I'd be happy to debate policy with someone focused on facts. But you've seemed distracted lately." Miller's eyes narrowed. "I'm sorry. What exactly are you suggesting?" "Oh, I'm not suggesting," Crockett replied. "I'm simply asking if everything's all right back in Austin." The room tensed. No one moved. No one breathed. Miller blinked. That confident mask slipped for the briefest moment, but Crockett caught it. "I don't know what this has to do with immigration," he snapped. "Neither do private rooftop gatherings at the Lauren Hotel," she answered. "Yet here we are." He leaned forward, voice sharp. "You're out of line." "I'm well within it," she said evenly. "Would you prefer I stick to the facts? Because I have some." Her hand rested on her phone. She didn't lift it, didn't show anything. She didn't have to. March 19th, she said, voice steady. Austin, Texas. SpaceX donor event. Your wife, Katie, in a black dress. Elon Musk whispering in her ear. 2 photos, 1 witness and 1 congresswoman who knows exactly what happened. Miller's face drained of color. This is a smear campaign, he barked. This is character assassination. No, Stephen, Crockett said. This is the truth. Something you've run from for years. I just brought it to your front door. He knocked over his water glass. A sharp clatter echoed through the chamber. Adez rushed to clean it up, but the damage was done. Crockett never raised her voice, never showed the images, but she didn't need to. Every person in the room and every viewer at home saw what just happened. Stephen Miller had built a career on weaponizing other people's secrets. And in one 5-minute exchange, Jasmine Crockett showed him what it feels like to face your own. As he sat, trembling, eyes darting, the chairman looked up. Mr. Miller, you may respond or yield the floor. He said nothing. He couldn't. Crockett tilted her head. Her voice lowered, but hit like a hammer. Maybe we should take a recess, give you time to check in with Austin. Or Elon. The gallery erupted in whispers. Miller stood, stumbled over his notes, and stormed out. Clip. Viral. Immediate. Jasmine Crockett didn't destroy Stephen Miller. She let him destroy himself, on camera, in real time, with nothing but the truth and perfect timing. The clip hit Twitter before Stephen Miller even left the hearing room. 17 seconds of brutal, career-ending silence and a single line, "Stephen, how's Katie enjoying Austin lately?" sliced through the internet like wildfire. Within 45 minutes it had 2 million views. By the time Miller made it to his car, Miller melted down. The edits came fast and furious. TikTok creators turned Miller's stunned face into reaction memes. Instagram flooded with side-by-side screenshots of Crockett's stare and Miller's collapsing expression. On YouTube, political commentators posted breakdowns within hours, calling it the most devastating takedown in recent congressional history. CNN opened their evening broadcast with a slow-motion replay of the hearing. Their lead anchor called it a masterclass in timing and restraint. Over on MSNBC, a panel of legal experts praised Crockett's discipline. She didn't leak a single image. She didn't raise her voice. She simply held a mirror up to a man who's made a career of shattering other people's reputations. Even Fox News, usually quick to defend conservative operatives, struggled to find a line of defense. Their 8 p.m. host tried spinning it as an ambush, but the footage made that claim laughable. The facts weren't fabricated. The reaction wasn't exaggerated. Miller crumbled in real time, live for millions to see. And the memes didn't stop. One viral edit overlaid Crockett's words with the sound of a boxing bell. Another cut to black and white footage of Miller slumping back in his chair with sad piano music playing underneath. Twitter users called it the political knockout of the decade. But the attention wasn't just comedic, it was cathartic. For years, Miller had weaponized personal data to destroy his rivals. This time, he was on the receiving end, and the country saw the difference. One man crumbled under scrutiny. One woman stood poised under pressure. 2 days later, TMZ posted the photos. Katie Miller and Elon Musk seated together at a candle-lit restaurant in Los Angeles, deep in conversation, their hands almost touching across the table. The headline, "Political Power Couple Implodes." Katie Miller moves on. By that evening, the story had leapt from gossip column to national news. Divorce papers were filed that Friday. Katie cited irreconcilable differences and requested a division of assets, including their Georgetown townhouse and shared investments. Stephen's legal team rushed to seal the documents, but the damage was already done. Miller's professional empire collapsed just as fast. The Heritage Foundation removed him from their speaker lineup. The American Enterprise Institute issued a vague statement about realigning priorities, then quietly ended their contract. Cable news shows that once welcomed him with open arms suddenly ghosted his booking agents. One host reportedly told producers, "He's radioactive now. No audience wants to hear from a guy who can't handle his own medicine." Old enemies began to resurface. Journalists, aides, and former staffers posted receipts. And then came the most cutting blow: silence from his allies. No one defended him. No one stepped forward. Even former White House colleagues stayed quiet. Behind closed doors, it was clear they were relieved. His grip on Washington had always been powered by fear. Now, without it, he was nothing. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett was everywhere. Late-night shows played clips of her takedown on loop. Young staffers at Capitol Hill whispered about her like she was a legend. The Hill ran an op-ed titled, "How Jasmine Crockett Redefined Congressional Power." Time magazine called her moment the embodiment of grace under pressure. In one viral interview, Crockett addressed the backlash from a few conservative pundits who accused her of stooping too low. "He played dirty," she said, staring straight into the camera. "I played smart. I didn't leak the photos. I didn't fabricate a scandal. I asked a question, and he answered it with his silence." The quote spread like wildfire. Screenshotted, subtitled, stitched into every platform imaginable. It wasn't just a clapback. It was a shift, a new political doctrine. Justice through precision. By the following week, Crockett's fundraising numbers had tripled. Her inbox overflowed with support. Veterans, young women, former politicians who had stayed silent under Miller's shadow for years. One handwritten letter simply read, "Thank you for reminding us bullies aren't invincible." And Stephen Miller? He went dark. No interviews, no statements, no tweets. A man, once addicted to control, now couldn't even manage the chaos of his own downfall. His silence was louder than any speech he'd ever given. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't tabloid fuel. This was political accountability, delivered with surgical precision. Stephen Miller didn't get exposed because someone leaked his secrets. He got exposed because he underestimated someone who did her homework. Jasmine Crockett didn't ambush him. She mirrored him. He made a career out of using private details to destroy public figures, and for once that mirror stared back. For years, Miller wielded fear like a weapon. Candidates folded, journalists backed off, staffers tread lightly. His playbook was as old as Washington itself: dig up dirt, plant doubt, go for the throat. But here's the thing about playing dirty. Eventually someone shows up who isn't afraid to get clean results from your own mud. Crockett didn't leak the photos. She didn't name names in a press release. She didn't hold a press conference. She waited until the stakes were high, the lights were on, and the moment was perfect. And then she asked one question that told the entire story without ever needing to tell the story. That's not revenge. That's restraint. And that's power. Today, political insiders call it the Crockett curve. The moment you outmaneuver someone so thoroughly they collapse under their own reputation. Media trainers are dissecting the silence, the pacing, the delivery. Young politicians are studying the moment, not for what she said, but for what she didn't have to say. And Stephen Miller? His brand collapsed. His contracts vanished. His power disintegrated not because someone yelled at him, but because someone refused to flinch. Crockett reminded America that strength isn't loud, it's focused, strategic, timed. And when the time came, she didn't shout down a bully. She exposed him. Now it's your turn. Should political operatives be held accountable with their own tactics? Or should we draw a line between justice and retaliation? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Smash that like button if you believe courage can be quiet. And make sure you subscribe, because next time, we're exposing the billionaire behind a Capitol Hill meltdown that Washington hopes you never see. Justice doesn't always raise its voice. Sometimes, it just asks the right question and watches everything fall.